Welcome to the very final session of the day. So I know we are now the only session between you and the drinks reception. And while I'm not going to say we've kept the best till last, I was really impressed with the energy of our speakers when we did some of the prep calls for this session. So I am hoping this is going to be a very high energy right to the end of the day. So in terms of this final session and the topic, it's, in the description you'll have seen, it's called Equipping Public Servants to Succeed. But really, we've heard so much today about all of the things that we all need to do as public servants, as civil servants, to kind of really transform the way we deliver services to the public. But to do that, we need to make sure that our colleagues, that we have the tools, the infrastructure, the investment that we need. So I think this session will wrap up a lot of the themes and issues that have arisen throughout the conversations today. Same format as before. I'm going to introduce our speakers, invite them to give short, so we're going to keep those introductory remarks short, opening remarks, and then we will throw over to you. So at any point, run over to the microphones and indicate that you have got questions to put to the panel. So we will hear from John Millans, who is COO, CDS of the Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat. Then we'll hear from Carl Hoots, who is the Group Chief Digital and Information Officer at the Department for Energy Security and Net Zero and the Department for Science, Innovation and Technology in the UK, the longest title so far today. I think you have, Carl. Then we have Erica Wren, who is the Chief Data Officer for Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship in Canada. And we have Anna Wong, who is Director at the Treasury Board of the Canada Secretariat, and Megan Collins, Chief Enterprise Information Management, Corporate Services Sector, Treasury Board of Canada Secretariat. Also quite a long title. John, coming straight over to you for your opening remarks.
Sure. So I saw some of my colleagues here. It's really nice to be here. I'm John Millans. As introduced, I lead the operations teams at the Canadian Digital Service. And so many people are somewhat familiar with CDS. CDS was created 6 years ago now, back in 2017, and it's essentially a digital services team formerly within Treasury Board Secretariat and now within Service Canada. And one of the reasons I'm here is because CDS was established to help departments deliver and design and deliver their services differently. And one of the ways to do that was to recruit the kinds of talent that we needed to do that, complementing the skill sets that we had internally. And that journey started off very much in a sort of figuring out the operating environment that we needed, figuring out the flexibilities we needed, and of course, as my government friends will remember fondly, the memorandum to cabinet and the Treasury Board submission process, and they all sort of revolve around these fixed and very formal authorities you need to sort of establish these things. But in fact, at CDS, we didn't need any of those. We needed one to create a logo, and the rest of it was management flex. And so I'm really looking forward to chatting today about how we push the boundaries and really take advantage of the space that we actually already have, both as leaders and as employees within the federal government in particular. And when I think back to the earliest days of CDS, it was really about, how are we going to recruit these people? Part of that equation is what? What are they going to work on? How are they going to see impact every day? How are they going to know that the work they're doing doesn't just go into the file cabinet and get filed away and they wonder what happened to it, or that, those 3 or 4 years of their life when they wanted to contribute something to Canada. And the second thing is sort of the environment in terms of the tooling that we provided people. So, whether that's, your SaaS tooling, whether it's, the forms that, the form that your processes take, we really tried to design this around having lean governance, lean approvals. The focus was on doing. And so what tools did the employees need to be able to do that? And have gone through that journey, ups and downs and all throughout. And obviously government has changed quite a lot since those early days 6 years ago, which leads me to my last point, which is how do we take what we learn when we offer an enabling environment, one where employees feel valued, they come in, they know the impact of their work, they ask for a tool and the answer is not maybe in months or years, but let's find a way to get it to you. How do we take that back to the center, so to speak? And the center could be anybody. It could be a common service organization like Shared Services Canada, and I'm sure we have colleagues here from there. Or it could be Treasury Board Secretariat with the policies that are designed for how government manages itself. How do we take what we learn and make more of it and scale it and find other people who are looking for those solutions? And so to sum that up, it's been quite the journey at CDS. And if any of my colleagues are here, I'm sure they can attest to it. But it's one where we started as a pilot And we were offered and took advantage of these management flexibilities, if you will, and pushed them as far as we could. And I think we've seen some of that come to fruition for the rest of government in certain areas, and certainly delivery teams, where now it's sort of status quo that you can get SaaS tooling. Now it's status quo that we would hire from the outside and take advantage of things like the interchange policy to do so. So it's been quite the exciting ride, and I'm looking forward to the chat today. Thank you for having me.
Brilliant. Thanks, John. So really focusing there on one of the enabling factors. How do you recruit and retain great people? How do you make sure they're working on quality work? They feel like they're making a difference. They know the impact that they are having personally. Do they have the systems, the processes that will help them do that job? Do they feel valued? And then how do you share that good practice? Thanks so much, John, for setting the scene for us. Carl, over to you.
Thank you. Yeah, so aside from having an incredibly long job title, I also have responsibility for all of our digital data and technology activity across those two departments, and also run the end-use compute productivity services for 13 other organizations in the UK. So at heart of all of that is how we're equipping people to be able to perform the job to the best that they can. And for us, my role is particularly a collaborative response with colleagues across corporate services. As much as you're saying about talent attraction, retention, development, how does that work? How are we working with finance to make sure, A, we get the money that we want, but B, actually we're spending it in the right way. I think the other thing we're trying to really focus on is really looking at how can we apply the same rigor that we do to externally facing, citizen-facing services, and why isn't we can't do that internally? So I think for all too long, we've all put up with services that don't work in as good a way as they possibly can. To be successful, we need to kind of flip that dynamic a bit. So looking at what are our personas, how do we do proper user journey mapping, and really nail down how that's going to work in a really collaborative way, not this is what the digital team think everybody should have internally.
Brilliant. Thanks so much, Carl. So the importance of that there, I think that's definitely a thing that's come up throughout the day, that collaboration. How do you enable all the professions to work together and facilitate that collaboration? But I really like what you said there. We've been talking a lot about improving services to the public, but maybe we neglect improving our own internal systems as well. And that's just as important to actually make that final kind of transformation.
Yeah, because I think just to add on to that, is that, when we look at the entire system, it includes what we do in the back office. If we're looking at just what the end result is, then we've missed the trick, because the entire system could be more effective and more efficient if we're doing it end to end.
Yeah, thanks, Carl. Erica.
Thank you. Thanks for the invitation to be on this last and best panel of the day with my esteemed colleagues. So I'm here to maybe talk about a different kind of investment. I think we all know digital literacy is absolutely essential. You need a workforce that's proficient in using computers, that can communicate digitally, that can be open into learning new tools, digital tools. But I want to talk about data literacy a little bit, and why I think data literacy actually should be the investment that the public service should be making in our future workforce. So it sounds like a big word, but to demystify it, it's really just the data literacy is really just the ability to understand, interpret, and communicate data. And I want to go a little bit step further. And I wanted to think that it's not just about understanding data, deciphering millions of rows and tables and spreadsheets. It's about being able to take that data and turn that into insights, actions, and then turn that into something that's relatable to the people. So why is it so important in the digital age? Well, it's 2023, and I think we live in a data-driven world. Look around us. So being able to navigate through this sea of data is absolutely essential. And as manager, as public service leaders, we cannot overlook the ability to be able to equip our workforce with data literacy. So why is that so important? So I think that if we have a data literate workforce, these same people, that they can have the ability to sift through vast data sets. They'll have the ability to draw knowledgeable actions through these data sets. And that in turn is going to make them into more informed and confident decision makers, ensuring that our policies, our decisions are deep rooted in evidence and in data and in insight. So it's really not that far stretched. If you look around us, data literacy is everywhere. Imagine a public service that has to manage through a COVID-19 pandemic. If we are data literate, which we are to a certain extent, to a lot of extent actually, we will know what data to collect when we are on the ground, whether it's data related to communities, patients, hospital, resource utilization. If we know how to analyze the data, we can look at this data and start thinking about the resource allocation rate across the healthcare professions. We can take this data and think about who are the really most vulnerable people we should protect. If we have the ability to draw insight from the data, then we can start making decisions around how to prioritize our resources, how to protect the most vulnerable. And if we can communicate this data, we can run public campaigns to convince people what are the best ways to stay healthy and safe, and also inform our public about the impacts of vaccination. So also to say that you can see this is not just about numbers, right? It's much beyond just crunching numbers. Data literacy really is acting as the bridge between data and people, between tables and spreadsheets and insight. So I think I want to leave everybody with this. It's 2023, we live in the digital world. It's very, very easy to let technology take the center stage, but let's not forget the human element. And as we invest in the future workforce for the public service, we absolutely need to remember that technology can help us to process data, but it's really the critical thinking, the judgment, the integrity, and the creativity of all the people that's using the systems, that's using the technology, that makes everything relevant, that makes data a part of our everyday life. So I think going forward, let us use the power of data literacy to move us towards a more insightful, a more informed, and more adaptable government.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Erica. That issue of data and digital going hand in hand and not being able to implement things like AI if the data, the quality data isn't there, that came up right at the start of the day and I think has been a theme throughout the day. But what you're saying, obviously, is to be able to harness that, we need to make sure that we have a workforce across the public service, across the public sector, that understand the power of data, understand how to get the insights from data. I'd be curious to hear from the audience maybe when we get to conversations, how many people in this room think they get the training that they need on data to do all of these great things that we've been saying today. So maybe people might have some comments on that as well. Thanks, Erica. Anna, over to you.
Awesome. So first of all, I have to say, like, huge kudos for being here. Like, look around. Amazing. It's like 4 something and you're here, which is, I think, a testament, though, like what Erica's saying. People here across the public sector, and certainly colleagues I work across the government of Canada, are passionate. Like, we're here for it. We see the mission. We want to make a difference. Or else you wouldn't be in a session at like 4 something to talk about skills and how to equip their public service, right? So I think like that in itself is a testament just to how important this topic is, and something that I am super passionate about and get a chance to work in my day job. So it's kind of funny. So I am neither an HR or a tech person, like neither which is hilarious, right? Being in a job and a panel about that. But I think what really drew me to this, I'm a policy person, kind of like classic policy development by training and trade, I suppose. But a couple of years ago, I really came to realize our most, to me, wicked kind of complex problem was our lack of ability internally to tackle things for ourselves as a government. So that is, we didn't have the capabilities, the skills, the competencies, the knowledge to do things for ourselves, to modernize whichever service line, either that's internal or external, that you're working a part of. And I really saw, oh my goodness, like we need to get a much better handle of this and be able to, it seems kind of meta, but basically it's like redefining the work, right? It's redefining what does it mean to have a modern government in 2023? And in it, what are the skills? What are the knowledge areas? What are the capabilities that you require, no matter what your domain is? It doesn't matter if you're an HR person or you're in tech or you're in finance. Like, what are those foundational things that you have to know? And then how do we institutionally, and here's my Treasury Board hat, how do we support that? So first of all, define it, right? And then how do we actually support you in that? And it's not just go on training. Like, I mean, training is a part of it, but it's really fostering and encouraging this environment and culture of continuous learning and development, right? And that's all of us. Like, that's, you know, we have to do that institutionally, but you have to do it in your teams. If you're a team leader or manager, you have to exemplify that as a leader yourself. So I'm super passionate about it. And in my day job, I actually get to do this, which is kind of awesome. I'm the director of digital talent development in our chief CIO office of Canada at Treasury Board, mouthful in French, even longer. And it's pretty great. So on a day-to-day basis, I get to work with departments across the GC to help them with their strategies on how to attract, develop, and retain. And currently, one of my big priorities is to kind of do exactly that, like redefine what are those base digital competencies that we all need, no matter what domain you are, right? So everyone remembers, you know, in your PMA, your performance management, you sort of have like those 4, right, that everyone has. It's like encoded, and you kind of like, you know, fill them out as best you can. And so for me, it's reimagining, what does that mean today? Like, what are those today? So I'm love to chat with you more about it. We're just finishing kind of like our alpha on it. So that's our kind of draft, if you will, in the kind of the lingo. So happy to chat more about that, and great to be here.
Thank you. I really like what you said about your interest in this started when you come into an organization in the public sector and you look around and you think, do we actually have the capabilities, the skills, the knowledge to tackle things for ourselves? And I think quite a lot of people, when they join, certainly this was Mike, you kind of look around and go, this is a bit nuts. Like, this is a bit crazy. Why do we do it this way? But then after time, you just kind of accept it. And actually, we can't accept things when we know there are better ways to doing it. But like you say, you have to define it and then work out how you support it. And you've come, again, what we've touched on as well in other speakers, how do you recruit and retain digital talent? So I want to come back to that, because I think we're definitely competing with the private sector to get the best people, and how do we kind of make that a reality? So, Megan, over to you. Final comments.
I made the joke that I was the anchor. I guess I'll anchor it into my personal experience. So I'm Chief of Information Management. I've been in information management positions in a few different departments in private sector, not-for-profit as well. And one thing I've noticed is, like, there's a huge evolution within information management. And I think a lot of other disciplines are feeling that too. I think with low code, no code, IT is sort of feeling that pressure as well. But it's not only about, like, how do you retain people, but it's how do you, like, we always talk about transferable skills, but what about translatable skills? So there's so many, like, skill sets and expertise that, for example, in the IM community that we have, now we're not working in records rooms all the time anymore, but that same expertise, that same experience is still really, really important as we're starting to digitize our systems. Our requirements and our responsibilities are still the same. We still are accountable the same way. We still have to hit the same requirements. We have to still dispose of our information. We still have to have litigation holds. We still have to be there for ATIP. But what does that mean when we're in a digital space? And all of those same skill sets are still really important. So I think today I've heard a lot about it's really important to have change management, and it absolutely is. But I think we think about change management from an enterprise perspective. I think that's always just like, yep, absolutely. We've got to make sure everybody's on board. But what about within our own teams? Do your team feel, are they equipped? Do they feel on board to be able to provide that service? Because transformation, and it was said earlier today on a panel, that transformation comes from your people. If you don't have your people on board, if they don't feel like they're equipped to be able to usher in that change or support it in the long term, then you're not really going to be successful in that transformation. And those skill sets are there. It's making sure that you are also having those conversations internally. I think during the pandemic especially, we really had to pivot fast. I think almost so fast that we're probably doing pirouettes at this point. But we really had to move quickly. But it's making sure that you're bringing your people along. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to lose those skill sets. It's translating them into today. And that's our job as managers, right? That's being able to provide training, but also the change management pieces of making people feel comfortable and they still have a place at the table with where we're going.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's interesting what you said there about COVID, because we've done a bit of research with Global Government Forum. And I think during COVID, post-COVID, civil servants actually felt a really great sense of pride because they'd managed to pivot quickly. They could see the difference they were making to people. They really stepped up and did things in different ways. And what you're saying is, how can we keep that sense of adaptation and pace as we go into kind of digital transformation? How do we bring our people with us? Thank you so much. Fantastic opening comments there. I am going to go straight to the audience. I do have a couple of questions myself. But if you have, yes, do you want to come over to the microphone there? Does anyone else have a question? If they want to come up to the microphone here, then I can take a second question as well. If you want to come up there, or, yep, you come up afterwards. Thank you. You ask yours first. We'll take two questions together and I'll put both questions to the panel.
All right, perfect. My name is Mehnaz Tabassum. I'm an IT project manager with Treasury Board and a colleague of Megan. As someone who worked in various government departments and currently in IT, the digital tools that I use now versus what I used 5 years ago made my life way better. But because I'm tech savvy, I was able to transition with the change very smoothly. But at the same time, we need to take into considerations public servants who actually like using those tools, who are very comfortable with the way that they work, and very rightfully so. So my question to all of you is that how can we ensure that when we upgrade technology for public servants, they are well prepared, comfortable with the changes, so it doesn't disrupt their work? Thanks.
Great. I love this question. I'm probably one of those people that gets very comfortable with old technology. So keep that question in mind. We'll take one more and then I'll come to you in the next round of questions. So one more question.
Yes, hi. So my name is Dan. I work in the Chief Data Officer branch at ESTC. And I have a response today and then a couple of questions specifically for John. Actually, I have millions of questions for John, millions, but
You can
ask
ask your millions in the drinks reception. Just one for now.
Fair. So my response is to the request made earlier of the attendees about data literacy and what's in place. So I just wanted to sort of shamelessly plug that our CDO office last year had launched our first departmental data literacy program that does target every employee within the enterprise. It's based on a sort of wizard that walks folks through to determine sort of a persona that they might fit into in relation to how they use data or consume data or so forth, and then provide learning paths after that with sort of robust training resources. We did a baseline study using Dataabilities, which is a commercial tool to sort of gauge sort of basic data literacy levels. It's sort of a survey, but that will continue to sort of be the tool, I think, one of the tools we use to monitor the progress of our program. The question I had for John is, now that you moved over to Service Canada from TBS, do you expect that the Canada Digital Service will still be able to operate in the same lean way that you have in the past, focused on doing, as you had said? Or do you foresee a little more bureaucracy having to be involved now that you're sort of seated in a service department? And if there's anything at all you could share about maybe any priorities that are on the table in terms of your projects, it would be greatly of interest.
Okay, John, I'm going to ask because that's specifically for you, and I think anyone else can answer that one. If you want to answer that one, and then everyone else can answer the comfortable with tools one.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll do the best I can. I mean, it's early. The transfer happened over the summer, midway through the summer, so we're still learning is the short answer. But I think what I would position is that CDS is going over there to make a difference and make an impact, and it's building on what we've done so far. And so the notion is that we can bring the best of what CDS does, the practices, the products, the people, and make a difference from over there and be closer to the services. We've been sitting in a central agency for a long time, and in a lot of ways it makes sense to bring CDS closer to frontline service delivery through all channels. So not to non-answer it, but it is early, and I think we're learning, but at the same time we're absolutely intent on bringing what we have and making more of it, scaling it up, not sort of, we want that to be the outcome of CDS moving over to Service Canada, for sure.
Thanks, John. Carl, we'll start with you. I will change the order afterwards, but we'll start with you for this one. The Mehnaz's question, I really like this because again, it's about the human kind of response to things. How do we bring colleagues along and get them to embrace new technologies?
So I think there's two parts to that question for me. There's the internal digital team, right? So, and we get the same resistance, right? Which I find odd at times, given we're a function which is largely about promoting change and has to deal with a lot of change on a constant kind of basis. So we try and apply the same rigor around change management, engagement. We try and encourage people to be inquisitive. We have a kind of minimum 2 hours a week that we want you to spend on learning and development, up to a certain amount of time. That can be in the way that suits you. So whether that's with Pluralsight, who are next door, we have a subscription to there, whether it's going to training courses, whether it's going to conferences, networking, whatever it is, whatever works for you, do it so that you kind of open your horizons. Then I think for the rest of the organization, so the consumers of our services, it goes back to my earlier point about why are we treating them differently to the same way, than we would do for a citizen-facing service. So if we're citizen-facing service, we do a lot of user research. We make sure that we're dealing with hard-to-reach cohorts, that accessibility is built in. We look at the multi-generational dimension to it. When it comes to internal services, we kind of just say, well, it's there, you can get on with it. We don't care whether you're 70 or whether you're 16 or whatever else it is. So there's definitely something in that, and I think that is a problem we're storing up when we look at future generations. Not going to look at my own children, but kind of the way they voice dictate absolutely everything, which is really annoying because you can't listen to it when you're in a meeting and respond to it. But I see colleagues in suppliers doing the same thing, and I have to message them back and say, type what you bloody want me to answer because I can't listen to it. But it's dealing with that. It's going to get more and more pervasive. So when it comes to information management, which is also part of our responsibility as an example, right? How are we going to make sense of voice notes? How does that become an official record? What are we going to do with it afterwards? How do we store it, disseminate it, etc.? So I think we should apply the same rigor internally as we do externally.
Brilliant, thanks. Let me see in terms of the order. Megan, come to you.
I guess I'll maybe also answer this in two ways. So I think for my clients, I'm in internal services, so corporate services, so we support people within our department at TBS. And I think my main philosophy is always, what is in it for them? People are resistant to change because they get comfortable in the ways that they work with their information and the way that they save and they share their information. And if we're giving them a new tool that's going to change that, they are not happy, unless it makes their life easier or it's somehow more beneficial to them. There has to be a value statement there. And again, back to translatable skills, a lot of people in IM are really good at reference interviews. So it's getting those requirements of like, what's your process? Show it to me. Well, here, let me tell you this new tool. Here's how you're going to do it. It's going to be almost the same as what you currently do, or it's going to save you time, or here's some really good added benefits, right? What's in it for them? Kind of make things up, because if it's not easy for them, they're going to find another way to do it. So that's really how I look at it, equipping that way. Internally, I think it's also equipping your team. So giving them the training that they want or that they need, the support. I mean, my first job within the public service was as a customs officer. So you can pivot. I went to school as well for information science, but did I think I'd be PowerShelling regularly? No. But this is life. Again, you can pivot and you can learn these skills. There's so many things that are available to your team, but it can feel daunting. I have people in my shop who signed on when they were working in a records room. Telling them that all of a sudden now we're going to be working into an information system that's quite nebulous is very, very daunting for them. You have to bring them along. So it's really, to me, a twofold space. I manage a team. I want to make sure that they feel comfortable because, again, they are supporting our clients, but our clients are also looking at, okay, you got me a shiny new tool. What's in it for me? And we really have to make sure we provide that outcome, the value strategy there as well.
Thanks, Megan. Anna and Erica, I'm going to come to you for anything you want to add to what's already been said, and then we'll go to the next set of questions.
I would just add, because I think my colleagues did a brilliant job. I think it's really important to recognize, it is hard. This summer I was redoing my French level. So for all of you in the government of Canada, you understand that challenge. And so I decided as part of my immersion to switch all my devices to French. And I was like, I wanted to shoot myself. I was so frustrated because I was like, what? Because I had to basically relearn all my devices, right? So I did this for my work devices, my personal devices. And when you're in a pinch and you just need to get the thing and you're like, but where is it? I mean, that's what happens every time we force an update on people, don't we? Right? And it just kind of comes and it's like, oh my goodness. And it's amplified if you have, for example, employees, which we all do, who have disabilities, right? Because they're used to something very specific and then suddenly you're changing their framework. So I think, and I'll leave it at that, it's recognizing there really is a human factor to it. And then I think if you start from that, then it is going to go so much more smooth. So,
thanks. Erica, did you want to add anything?
Oh, I think there's a lot of fantastic responses. I feel like I don't really have much to add. The only thing I will say is, take a human-centric approach. If Amazon were to ask you to fill out 27 questionnaire, email this person between, 3 p.m. and 5:13 p.m., they will be running out of business on day 2, right? So as government service providers, especially for those who work in internal services, make it easy for users, treat them how you want them to be treated, involve them from day one, recruit, I would say, pilot users or pioneers or whatever you want to call them, to turn them into the champions for you so they can communicate the values of the tools to their colleagues, involve them, streamline your service, make it easy, make yourself approachable. Don't make people talk to a generic IT box. It's one of my pet peeves. There are very, very simple things you can do in a human way that can change people's mind. You'll be surprised at the results you get.
Thank you. Definitely coming through loud and clear. Don't forget the human in all of this. So I know we had another question already if you want to come up. And any other question, because this is definitely, yes, do you want to come over to the microphones? We've got 3 questions here. And just to say, this is your very last chance. If you've had a burning question all day, we've got such a great panel here. Any issue you want, I know this panel will be able to deal
That wasn't in the debrief.
We didn't sign that. Hold on.
Anything you like, anything goes now.
No
in
medical
this
advice.
last session.
Can't give any of that. No.
We'll take, let's take all 3 questions. If you could keep your questions quite short, and then we'll get through as much of it as we can. Thanks.
Salut tout le monde. Hi, my name is Andreas, and I'm the OCG, also the Controller General at TBS. Erica, you mentioned about data literacy, and to me, I feel like that's very critical. And my question to you is that how do we better communicate data in a way that we can minimize issues with misinterpretation of data? Because I feel like understanding data just goes beyond, but when it comes to interpreting data is the issue that we have. How can we better communicate that to minimize the risk?
Thank you. Fantastic question. Erica, I'll be putting that one to you. How do we communicate better around data interpretation, maybe especially for non-technical colleagues? Second question.
Hi, my name is William. I'm from the Office of the Chief Human Resource Officer at TBS. My question it's going to be a very concrete question. Can you name one skill that you think future leaders should be prepared for? One digital skill, to be clear.
Does it have to be a digital skill? Because that's quite interesting. That's a difference. You definitely want to put in digital there. I'm giving you a second chance.
If you can name a non-digital skill and a digital skill, because I want to keep it short, right? I want to keep it short out here. We don't have much time, right? But if you want to name a non-digital skill, but we can focus on digital skill, we're pressed for time.
Okay, one digital or non-digital skill that future leaders are going to need to have. And then the last question.
Hi, I'm Skylar. I'm coming from the provincial government, actually. So really great tie into that last question. One of the things that I was wondering is we're talking about trying to recruit good talent for the public service. But one of the things that I know that makes pivoting difficult for some people, I know I'm in the digital transformation space myself, is sometimes the cost and those barriers to getting those credentials. And sometimes, as much as we say it's great that we have all these alternative learning mechanisms, at the end of the day, when it comes to a CV or a resume, people are typically looking for that credential from an accredited university or college. So how do you think that we can be flexible in our hiring and creative, like what you're seeing often in private sector companies, where they're looking outside of traditional pathways and look at more competency-based skills? Because I think that's what we're going to need, right? So yeah, thanks so much for your time.
Fantastic. So your question is about how are we more flexible in terms of accreditation? So maybe placing as much emphasis on competencies as maybe going out and getting the training from a kind of provider. Fantastic. Great questions there. Erica, I'm going to come to you first to answer the question on data literacy, and then I'll remind everybody on the panel of the other 2 questions.
Thanks. Great question. To me, in order to better communicate data and avoid risks, I think there's 3 things you need to keep in mind. The first thing is you have to make sure the data are trusted. What that means is when you're making a decision, when you're making, whether it's policy change or program change, that's based on data, you better make sure that data has the quality, it's representative, it's properly used, and it's properly digested. So trust in the data itself is key. The second, the people that are analyzing the data, whether call them data analysts or policy analysts or what have you, they need to be equipped with the skills and the tools to properly derive insight from this data. So the source of the data needs to be trusted, and the person that's communicating this data also needs to be credible in the sense that they can appropriately represent what the data says. And the third, I think it's the most important part for me, is you need to be able to tell a story using this data in an insightful and succinct way. Don't communicate with 17 pages of spreadsheets. When my team sends me that, I basically summarize that what you can tell it to me in 3 sentences or less, or facts and figures, or I'd make it a 2-minute read. So make your data jump out and tell the story. Make it succinct so you can make the long-lasting impact you wanted to make on people.
Thanks, Erica. So I think this will be the last round, and I'll probably start with you, Megan, and go this way along the line. So one or both of those questions, I think they are related. So it was around kind of what skills will a future leader need? Digital. The reason I put in non-digital is it might be we think in a digital world, leaders are going to need something that isn't non-digital, like the future leaders' skills. And then that sense of how are we going to be more flexible in terms of recognizing people's talents and skills in this new digital world. Megan, over to you.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it is interesting. From an IM perspective, there's definitely people who have accreditations within an IM field. And I think in certain boxes with IT fields, you need to have those. But at the same time, like for me, what I'm looking for within a team is your ability to have critical thinking skills and be able to communicate those effectively. And what I'm thinking is because technology is always changing, right? And you can constantly find different forums to be able to learn those things. But your ability to think, not just can I code this, but should I code this and why? What is the actual use case for this? Should I do this? What are the implications, the ethics of things? This is what I'm looking for as we continue to build within the public service, as we start to accumulate more data and more information. These are the sort of competencies that I'm looking for. To me, you can learn the other pieces. There's training available for those. It's can you do those two things? That's generally what I look for a lot.
Thank you.
So I would just add to that, I think that's brilliant, and that's like a really great base. And then that's how I would also layer on, besides the kind of basic, call it digital awareness, digital citizenship, and you add in the basic data and digital literacy. The other components I would see is, for example, continuous improvement. That idea that as a leader, but for anyone really, you have the ability to look at your business process, whatever domain you are, and continuously find ways to ask those why questions. But why are we doing this? And come up with tangible, small-scale ways to test and improve upon that, right? And that is both, to me, a mindset, like you have to be open to that, as well as a robust skill set to do that in a way that is measured and that is rigorous. And that kind of will, stand the test of time. In terms of the recognizing like skills-based recruitment, for example, that is something here at Treasury Board that we have been piloting and doing to a really awesome impact. And I just wanted to highlight some of my colleagues in ESDC who've had great success with the Indigenous IT apprenticeship program. And that is where we are actively marketing and recruiting people across Canada in their communities who would not meet in the Government of Canada context the IT qualification standard. So that's like a lot of blah, blah, blah to say we have a qualification standard that you usually need like a 2-year program or equivalent. So the or equivalent has always been there. But this program actually takes you on like a rotation of 2 years where you're hired on and you get that accreditation. And then afterwards you get that badge, like forever credential. And then you can move on and develop. And so that's a small scale pilot, but it can happen, right? And it needs to happen, quite frankly, so that we can help diversify our workforce. So I'm absolutely all for it. You want to check more stuff out or check out our skills-based recruitment platform. You can go on talent.gc.ca and happy to chat as well, but 100%.
Thanks. Erica.
I would say that, if you look today, a lot of the jobs that we do today did not exist 50 years ago. So in order for us to accurately predict the digital skills you need for the future is very difficult. But I will say that one skill I think that we should all have as public servants is the ability to rethink everything all over again. What that means is we're often really quite stuck on the path where we expect things to turn out a certain way. And we sometimes have blind spots as to why our original thinking wasn't working. So be humble, have humility as sort of your guiding star, and you have to be able to stop and rethink and agree with your opponents, agree with your biggest critics, and even with conflicts, and that's the only way that we can learn, we can improve. And that's what I think is quite important to prepare us for whatever is going to happen tomorrow in 50 years.
Thanks, Erica. So I like leaders of the future being humble and being able to rethink. Carl.
Yeah, I was going to give a slightly similar answer, so I won't go and repeat what Erica said. So I think on top of that, a specific digital skill will quickly be out of date. So for me, it's more about are they able to collaborate? Are they able to get the right people in the room, or even the wrong people in the room at the right time to try and solve a set of business problems, not try and find a problem to a solution that they've already come up with. So there's that angle. In terms of the CV point and what we look for, a degree isn't a prerequisite to come and work in our team, right? What we look for is attitude and adaptability. And we see that across the entire range of people we've got, from the most junior to the most senior people in the team. It is, have they been able to demonstrate on that piece of paper that they are adaptable. It's not about particular qualification. We can give you that when you come in. We've got great apprenticeship schemes internally. We've got great accreditation schemes across all of the pathways that we've got across the job group. So that's less of an issue for us. It's more about, do these people fit in within the team, is the kind of culture, right? Which you can't get from a CV, but you get once they're into the interview.
Fantastic. So collaborative in terms of leaders, and then that adaptability in terms of people that you bring in. John, we started with you. We're going to finish with you.
No pressure. I think there's a saying that goes back a number of years now, but it still holds true, I think, which is every government is a digital government. It just might not know it yet. And I think that's really true. And when I think of digital, I'm going to kind of wrap some of what I've heard from my colleagues. We think of digital and we think of it as tech, but really it's a way of working, and it's the things that allow us to work. And, a lot of good people have sort of defined what digital is that way. And, you take the continuous improvement, and you take the moving away from big bang of something coming out and being available to the public, and you move to iteration, and you move to testing, and you move to having confidence that it'll work when it's scaled up. Bless you. And I think one of the things that sticks to me there that we should expect of all of our leaders is to be human-centered, because it's the thing that transects what we deliver to the public. Some governments, including one that might be beside me, ensures that their ministers test services before they go out to the public. How do we take a human-centered approach to the things that we deliver? It's by continuously iterating them. It's by taking research data and information and feedback and incorporating that into the next version of that thing. And that thing is not going to come out in 6 months or a year. It's going to come out in 6 minutes or 6 days. It's moving that hyper cycle of sort of updates. And then just as we've talked about today, that same principle, I think, applies to how we treat our employees, how we roll out, systems, as we've talked about today, how we think about changes that we make to our operating model. If we're human-centered, it means we've talked to those people. It means we know what their pain points are now, and we've incorporated them into what we're about to do. And so it becomes less about business requirements and business and more about people and human needs. So I think that's the thing to me that ties it all together, and especially for digital, lies at the root.
Thank you so much. I mean, what a great way to end. I think the topics that you covered today and the things that you covered really did pull together a lot of those strands from today. So certainly that sense that digital transformation, better management of data, huge opportunities for the public service in the way that we do business, in the way we ultimately deliver services to the public, but also this sense that everything's moving fast. We need to be more agile. We need to adapt. We need to be able to flex to keep up with all of this. And we need to equip our staff and our colleagues so that they can do the best possible job for themselves and for the public. But what I really love is we've been talking about technology all day, but we've never forgotten the human. And I think that really came out of this session. So it's all about the human, even as we're talking about technology. I'm sure you will join me in saying a huge thank you to our wonderful panel here. I want to say a very big thank you to you, our audience. You've been fantastic. Look at how many of you are still in the room here for this final session. I'm sure it was the brilliant content, but it might also be that there are now drinks waiting for you outside. But thank you so much for your questions throughout the day. I hope you've enjoyed the day as much as I have. Please do take this opportunity to go and network, have a few drinks, have some refreshments, and also keep asking questions, because I think a lot of our speakers will be in the networking outside. Thank you, everybody, and I hope to see you again at another conference very soon. Thanks so much.